them or mature.
All right, let's do an explain yourself here, Carrie.
Okay, David.
Fourth division Hungarian soccer.
Oh.
And you don't need walk-up music in Hungarian soccer. You just ride the rails down.
You know what? That's pretty tough, David, and tough as in a good way. I like it. Like, I think you should start the show like that while you're doing the opening VO.
All right, I will try. It's like doing plank and just sort of sliding on down.
All core, David.
Yes, work those abs. And you always like to ride the banisters when you're a kid, and that's sort of a different way of riding the banister down.
I just thought of a wonderful transition. And
boy.
Speaking of abs, the guy that you're talking about next has an amazing core.
Yes, you're talking about Ezekiel Elliott, who's not allowed to wear that half shirt in the NFL, but sometimes
no longer.
Pre-game. So let's get back to this story. It's every week we're talking about this. Ezekiel Elliott, he has been his dominant self of late. 506 yards in the last 4 games, most in the NFL. But of course, the question is, will he play this week as this 6-game suspension hangs over his head? And Carrie, I believe you have someone who might have some answers there.
Oh, you know what? I do. I have our insider, Dan Graziano, joining us. So, Dan, I want to make sure that I'm getting this right. Tomorrow at 2 Eastern, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals will hear arguments regarding the NFLPA's request for an injunction on Elliott's suspension. This is a story that never ends, or it seems that way. So explain where we are with the case and if, in fact, Elliott will play this weekend.
It seems likely that he'll play Sunday, if only for timing reasons. This is a 3-judge panel hearing this request tomorrow. And at this time, this same court that's hearing it tomorrow has a stay in place, an administrative stay that keeps him on the field and holds off the suspension. So it seems likely that while they deliberate, that stay will remain in place and that they're likely to deliberate beyond the weekend. So, again, that's likely. That's not certain. I could turn out to be wrong, as I have been on a couple of occasions in this very complicated, twisty-turny kind of case. But it seems likely that the 3-judge panel won't rule on this request until early next week at the earliest, which means Elliott would play in the meantime. And that's my understanding.
Okay, so likely. I'm going to stick on that, and that's fine.
It's the best
and
I can do for you.
No, don't worry about it. I understand it is a complicated case, as you just mentioned. Something else that's complicated, or maybe not. Let's talk about the logistics on and off the field with Colin Kaepernick. So Colin Kaepernick is obviously suing the league. Roger Goodell reached out to him and said he'd like to meet with him. That meeting rejected because Kaepernick requested a mediator at the meeting. Do you think this will happen?
I think there's a scenario, Carrie, in which Colin Kaepernick and other players and Roger Goodell and league owners are all in the room at the same time having the kinds of meetings that players and owners had a couple of weeks ago. I think that's possible. A one-on-one meeting between Colin Kaepernick and Roger Goodell seems a little more far-fetched at this point, given the grievance you cite. He's got a collusion grievance pending against the NFL. You have a situation where owners' cell phone records are being subpoenaed. This is a very complicated situation, and it's one that puts Colin Kaepernick in direct opposition to Roger Goodell's league. So a meeting between the two of them to discuss what exactly, while that grievance is still pending, I'm just not sure how feasible that is. I do think it's feasible that Colin Kaepernick gets involved in the bigger discussions between the group of players, the group of owners that we saw having conversations about social issues in New York a couple of weeks ago. But there's no question that the issue of Colin Kaepernick has become an issue that has held up further talks there. Some players are insisting that Kaepernick be a part of those talks. Other players kind of feel like those talks can happen with or without him. And in the meantime, they haven't been able to schedule the next round of meetings. So it's kind of a mess.
Okay, it sounds like a mess, but from your take, and I just want to recap, you don't believe that a meeting between Roger Goodell and Colin Kaepernick is feasible, considering the legal situation, but perhaps a bigger meeting talking about certain issues within the league is more feasible. That is our Dan Graziano.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
In short, okay, I apologize. I didn't mean to wrap you up, but thank you so much for joining us.
Dogs got to go to Jordan Hare to take on number 10 Auburn. In fact, the top 3 teams in the playoff rankings all have road games against ranked opponents. And number 5 Oklahoma's at home, but they got to take on number 6 TCU Saturday night. Could be an elimination game there. Both schools already with a loss on the books. The top 5 school with the easiest game on paper this weekend, number 4 Clemson against Florida State. Didn't look like it was going to be easy back in August or September, but That's the way things have worked out. We've got our draft analyst, our draft expert, our draft savant. What do we call you these days?
Analyst is probably.
We'll stay with analyst, Todd McShay. You're going down to Clemson for this Florida State game. If we're talking about the quarterback, Kelly Bryant, well, it didn't look great against NC State. Some trouble there at times, but he pulled it out. Is there something that he does better at quarterback than his predecessor, Deshaun Watson?
He's a better runner, and he wants to run more than Deshaun did. Deshaun was focused, as he should have been, on being a pocket passer, working inside the system, stay in the pocket, maneuver, extend plays, and obviously he had the ability to run and was very good at extending plays. But I watched Kelly Bryant. You see a guy that is faster, more explosive, and wants to run. Like I said, he has that desire to run. It's a big part of his game. He's probably never going to be an elite passer in terms of consistency and efficiency, but he'll continue to improve in that regard. He has a lot of touch on the deep ball. And let's face it, NC State, that's a really good defense he went up against a week ago. He's been nicked up a little bit in previous weeks. I think he's getting back to full speed and full health. And when he's at full speed, he's one of the more dynamic runners at the quarterback position in the country. And this year that we've seen, I think, over 50 yards more per game rushing the football than they did a year ago with Deshaun Watson and Wayne Gallman at running back and probably a more veteran offensive line. So he has really helped that facet of the game. And they're more dynamic in the run game, but just not quite as efficient. Obviously, when you lose Deshaun Watson, you're going to dip a little bit.
Right. All right. We'll see if it's the formula for another title for Clemson. All right. Number 5, Oklahoma. Number 6, TCU. You almost wonder what the TCU defense is doing in the Big 12. It's this outlier. They're really good defense, allowing less than a touchdown a game over the last 4. How do you see this going? Because, as we know, the Sooners can run it up.
Yeah, this is a huge matchup. I think we're kind of overlooking it a little bit because you've got Notre Dame, Miami, you've got Georgia, Auburn. But to me, this is as big a game as we have all weekend. And you've got one team in Oklahoma that is, I don't want to say it's a one-man show, but Baker Mayfield is a large part of the reason why they have success. They're number 1 in the college football in terms of offensive efficiency. They're 69th in defensive efficiency and 126 on special teams. So they're struggling every other facet. They lost their 2 running backs to the NFL. They lost a receiver to the NFL from a year ago, and he all of a sudden is putting up bigger numbers and is playing with more efficiency. So what Baker Mayfield has done this year, to me, is the biggest story in college football. He has been the best, most impactful player in the country this year because of his ability to extend and create, but also I think we lose sight of his accuracy and decision making. And then the third part is just the leadership.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really fully get it until I was on the field watching him and watching every single teammate respond to everything he does and the emotion and energy he brings to the field. It's something special, and it makes him a unique player because of it.
For another day, I want to talk to you about where you would put him now, because I know you didn't have him in your elite quarterbacks before this season.
He's moving up.
He's moving up.
He is.
All right, well, that's a segment for another day. Todd McShay joining us today on Coast to Coast.